Welcome to Mike Ferry TV. It is the week, of course, of July 1 through 6, and happy 4th of July for those celebrating. We hope you do something fun. It's interesting, as we've been recording this sales series to you, the interesting responses that we're getting. Some of you are saying, wow, that one was very important, and we can tell by the viewership which ones you think are important. And then some of the topics, you'll see that, well, now I'm not going to watch this. You watch the first 30 seconds, now this isn't important to me, and you drop off. And we can see that because we get ratings every week as to the viewership. And what's interesting to me is to think that you can actually decide, A, before you watch and listen, what's important and what's not, and B, that you're actually deciding the quality of service that you're going to offer your buyers and sellers before you actually understand the process required to give the highest level of service to buyers and sellers. So I guess what I'm going to say to you from this point forward, watch a lot, watch carefully, watch with intensity. Because see, once you get away from the time management and the prospecting, listing, presentation, then all of a sudden you start saying to yourself, well, what is negotiating and customer service, and what do those things have to do with it? Well, they have everything to do with it. So let's pay very close attention to the next 5 to 6 weeks, because see, guys and gals, what makes the Mike Ferry sales system work is the simplicity and at the same time the depth of the Mike Ferry sales system. You can't go from first base to third without touching second. Watch, you can't get a hole in one unless you swing the golf club. So let's not skip, let's not be prejudiced, let's not forget that this system is based upon all different aspects. Now, obviously, we're 2 weeks before the Superstar Retreat. I hope that you're attending. I don't know why you wouldn't be. As a regular viewer and listener to what we teach, not participating in that 4-day event is a serious mistake on your part. So let's pay very close attention to the fact that we need to get you to Las Vegas for the Superstar Retreat. Okay, negotiating contracts. Now, isn't that a fun topic today? Because you and I both know one thing about today. We've said it week after week. If you're alive and breathing and taking listings, you're making money in real estate today. But the negotiating is as important today as ever, because you're seeing properties with 5, 6, 7, 8 offers, 10, 20, 30 offers. You're seeing today something we haven't seen in a long time, prices inching up. Not a lot, inching up, sometimes 1%, 3%, 4%. We're seeing prices bid up, which we haven't seen before. We're seeing inexperienced agents sitting down with their seller with 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 contracts and not knowing what to do. We're seeing 5 or 6 or 7 agents in a home one at a time coming into the seller, and between them not knowing what to do and the listing agent not knowing what to do in negotiating, we're seeing a lot of disasters take place that shouldn't take place. So I'm going to give you some points that I want you to consider when it comes to negotiating. The first point I wrote down was this. Almost every agent we talk to considers themselves good at negotiating, but truthfully, most are not good at negotiating because they don't have good sales skills. Negotiating is bringing two parties together. That's what negotiating is. Getting some agreement as to what's important and what makes sense to both parties in this transaction. Negotiating is the ability to ask a lot of questions to find out what they're thinking, what they're trying to accomplish, what they're trying to do. See, negotiating is asking questions and listening, and then giving advice based upon your knowledge of the market and the skills you have. Well, if anything I just said isn't part of your scenario, then you're not any good at negotiating. See, the truth is, in an ideal world, every listing you take is at fair market value. You get one offer at exactly that price. And there's a big down payment and a short term for getting it closed, and the loan's been pre-approved. That's perfect. Unfortunately, that's not the real world. See, today we have to understand the sales skills. We've talked about them for what now, 12, 13, 14 weeks. The sales skills are what make negotiations work. And it's when one person has good skills and one doesn't that somebody gets in trouble, whether it be the buyer, the seller, or the agent without the skills. The second thought I wrote down is, more than ever, we have to control what we say to the client, because we have to understand that the emotion and drama that agents bring to transactions is really what kills negotiation. And why is emotion and drama part of the transaction? Well, first of all, it shouldn't be. It's not your house, you're not the buyer, you're not the seller, it's not your equity. There shouldn't be any emotion and drama involved in this transaction at all. But the truth is there is, because whenever you have an agent listing agent, selling agent, who doesn't have a lot of experience, doesn't have a lot of skill, has not handled a lot of transactions, is doing one deal every 6 or 8 months, emotion and drama become as critical to that transaction as anything else. Keep the emotion and drama out of the transaction. It's not your house. It is not your equity. You're not going to move in with the buyer. Stay out of that side of the transaction. But then I wrote down, so that being the case, since you're not buying or selling the home, make sure that you understand the transaction is not about you, it's about them. See, too often, the ego gets in the way of the negotiating power. I'll share one quick story. Many years ago, more than I like to admit, I wrote an offer on a transaction piece of property, called the listing agent. In those days, we always went together to present. I walk in the house, seller sitting there, listing agent, very strong gal. As I took the offer out, she reached over and she grabbed it out of my hand. She just grabbed it, bang. And she looked at it and she goes, "We're not going to accept this." And she threw it across the table at me. Well, I was a brand new agent. I was intimidated. I got up and said, "Well, I'm sorry," and I left. I went back to my office. My broker, Pat McVeigh, he looks at this and says, "What happened?" I said, "She grabbed it out of my hand, looked at it, said no, and threw it across the table." He said, "Follow me." And Patrick took me right back to the seller's house. And we walked in that house with the listing agent and the seller, and the first thing Patrick said, with a big smile on his face, was to the seller, "You guys and gals are so lucky to have this listing agent representing you. I can't tell you how important it is to have an agent as good as she is. And let me tell you why she's good. Because when your home hasn't sold and you've had to move out, she's obviously going to make the payments on this property for you, since you won't accept the offer that you have in hand." And she said, "I wouldn't make their payments for them." He looked at her and said, "Then let's let them decide if the offer's right." They accepted it on the spot. Watch, it's not about you, it's about them. So the next part I wrote down is this: since you're not part of the negotiation, which you're not, don't let the commission be dragged into this transaction. Your commission is based upon what you've done to earn the right to get that home, buyer and seller together, and get it sold. What does your commission have to do with it? This is the fee. Watch, in every transaction worldwide, there's fees paid. When people come together, there's fees paid. And I don't care what you're negotiating on. You could be buying a fleet of new 727 jets. By the way, you can't buy those any longer. A fleet of new 767 jets. There's going to be some fees involved that are paid. The transaction between the manufacturer of the jet and the buyer, the fee is not the problem. The delivery, the quality, the obvious ability for the buyer to buy, the financing involved, the qualification, these are the issues. Don't let your commission become part of the transaction. And then I always say all the time, you have to understand, you can look at a seller and a buyer and say, listen, let's look at this thing logically, and let's decide if we can take this thing just as it stands. Because the truth is, in most cases, they can take the transaction as it stands if the two agents get out of the way and we ask questions to remove the emotion that gets in the way. But I said I needed more money than what they're offering. Well, right now, it's the best offer we have, isn't it? Well, yes, it is. And we don't have any other offers, do we? Well, no, we don't. And of the 22 offers that have been presented in 24 hours, isn't this the best of those? But I wanted more money. But really, isn't the market telling you right now that this is what the property's worth, since this is the best offer we've gotten? See, you've got to think about the fact that you have to have them accept the offer as it stands, because the truth is, they should accept the offer as it stands. And then the next point I wrote down, if you really want to understand negotiating properly, try to look at both sides of the transaction. If you're representing the buyer, try to see it from the seller's perspective. If you're representing the seller, see it from the buyer's perspective. Okay, why did that buyer make that offer at that price? Why did they come through at this particular point with this much of a down payment, this kind of financing? Okay, what were they thinking about? What did they see? And if you're representing the buyer, what is the seller thinking about? What are they trying to accomplish? Where are they going? What is their motivation? See, if we try to see things from both sides, we open our eyes to a totally different perspective. But then I guess probably the most important 2 points that I wrote down, which will be our last two on today, is you got to remove this thought that these people, these buyers and sellers, they better understand who I am. I'm the agent involved in this transaction. As I said a few minutes ago, get your ego out of the way. You're not making the payments. It's not your equity. It's not your home. You're not buying it. You're not selling it. You're representing the middle of the transaction. But then with that being said, the hardest part for all of us is the following. We're not going to win every time. We're not going to win every time. They're going to accept some. They're going to reject some. I've shared this in the past. Many years ago, I would go into the gym and work out every morning, and there was a guy that was a real estate agent that was big, buff, tough, strong guy. And I walk into the gym one day, and he's got his lips swollen, his teeth is broken, his eye is swollen and black. And I walked in and I said, my gosh, what happened? Did you get in a fist fight? What happened? Oh man, you're not going to believe this. I said, okay. Last night I was presenting an offer, and I went, oh my goodness. This is because of presenting an offer? He said, well, I presented the offer to the seller. The seller is there, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, and the listing agent, and I'm presenting the offer, and the listing agent kept popping off and making a lot of noise and objecting and screwing up my deal. I said, okay, that happens. Yeah, but it really made me mad. I said, yeah, but you got to tell me what happened here. Well, after a couple minutes of this, I just stood up and I popped the listing agent right in the mouth. I said, you what? I hit the guy right in the mouth. You're kidding. He goes, no. Then the seller jumped up and beat the crap out of me and had me arrested. I spent the night in jail. Now, here's the sad part. Not only did he make a series of stupid, emotional, dumb mistakes, have to agree, he lost his license for life. That was it for this guy. Well, watch, you're not going to win every time. I don't suggest popping the seller in the mouth if they don't like your offer. Guys and gals, don't be attached to the outcome. Come in professionally dressed. Come in professionally groomed. Come in totally prepared. Be a salesperson. Ask questions. Listen to the answers. Come prepared with the market stats to support it if you're the buyer, and have market stats to support it if you're the seller. Be prepared. Don't let your commission be the transaction. Ask them to accept it as it stands, and you can make this business in this very interesting time a lot more fun. So let me ask you a question. Are you going to go to the Superstar Retreat? No, honestly. Because we talk about it. You've probably been called. You've got emails from me. Are you going to go? Watch. It's time to make a decision. I'm here to negotiate with you on the fact that you should be going. But I'm not going to cut the price. I'm not going to cut the commission. I'm just expecting to see you there. Well, I'll see you next week in either case watching Mike Ferry TV. Have a great week from now to then.